On this episode of Off the Record, we made it. This is part 4 of us discussing the Amy Mihaljevic case, which is episode number 22. Thanks for joining us, and as always, cheers, mates. So it's very interesting to me because when we first started the show, and we're just sitting in the garage. Well, actually, at that point, it was your garage, but cold, hot. It's hot.
Mostly hot.
Mostly hot. There's damn dogs barking all the time. She had one job: don't let the dogs out. But when we're back there. Because we've never shied away from this. You were the true crime guy, and I was the guy that could record. But we'd also have these really long talks about cases, blah, blah, blah. So, but you being the true crime guy, and here's what's really interesting was I was talking with one of our detective friends the other week, and he was saying, because he knew us before. And he was saying, I knew that you were into crime or into talking about that kind of stuff, but you weren't like super into it, not like I do my own research. And it's crazy to me that we've done all these cases. I'm more interested by it now. I mean, obviously we do it every week, but I find it more interesting. I find these little minute details that maybe I shouldn't find super interesting, but I find it actually a lot more interesting.
Well, you've touched upon something that is key there. And look, okay, so in every crime that's committed, there is a mistake that is made by the offender. A lot of times the trick of solving the crime is finding what that mistake is.
Yeah.
Exploiting it, leading you to him or her, and then using it to get a conviction, using it to build evidence to get a conviction. So where you say minute details, and you've always said it, the devil is in the details, and you are exactly right, because if you can find that one mistake, or if you can find the one little thing that may connect the offender to the victim, if you can find that link, you might know who did it. And so I'm glad you touched on that, because this is one thing that I've been doing lately in regards to the Amy Mihaljevic case. Mm-hmm. So for some of these cases that I drag around with me, and the cases that you drag around with you, what I do from time to time is I like to, so I spent 3 or 4 nights looking into Amy's case again. And I told myself I wasn't going to let it consume me. And then Amy kept me up for 3 or 4 nights. I mean, I was up till, you say you're going to sit down for a couple hours. Next thing you know, it's 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
But were you drinking?
No. And I was sitting
because you do that thing where it's like you have 1 or 2 drinks, and then all of a sudden it's like 6 drinks later.
Yeah, but not when I'm looking at the cases, because it gets too it's work,
right.
And what happens with me, by the time I hit the second beer, I'm not doing any more work.
Right.
So
Party
anyway,
time. Turn on Rolling Stones and let's go.
And I actually find, how like some people, if they smoke some pot and they play video games, they're like, something happens where I'm in the zone, where I get to this level where it feels like I can just do anything I want on the video game. Like I'm one with my player, or one with my vehicle on there. Well, where I hit that mode is when it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, when it's pitch black outside, when my house is completely quiet, where it's late enough at night where you can almost feel the heat coming from the light bulbs in your house. Mm-hmm. There's some zone that I go into during those hours where I'm a little more open to different ideas, and things kind of creep in. And so one thing that I do with some of these red light cases is sometimes I'll throw out my old theory and I'll say, all right, I'm going to go into this and I'm going to look at it and I'm going to look for one thing, one little detail that if I can pose, if maybe there's a question within that detail,
Right.
and if I can answer that question, then this could point me in a direction of who did this, or it could point me in the direction of a likely pool of suspects. So the thing here is with the Amy case, I completely threw out my theory. Mm-hmm. And when I was going through it, I really honed in on one thing that happened. And this was a phone call that took place after Amy was abducted. After she was abducted, she called her mother. Her mother was at work. And she told her mother wanted to know, I spoke to your brother. He said you weren't home. Mm-hmm. Why weren't you home? And Amy tells her mother a lie. She says, well, I stayed late at school for, it was either a choir practice or a choir tryout. I don't know her exact words, but we do know that didn't happen. There was no choir practice or tryout that day. Mm-hmm. So what I really honed in on there was this thing. She's 10 years old. Her mother had not worked at this place for...
Is that 5th grade?
Yes, she was in 5th grade at the time. Her mother had not worked at this place for a long period of time.
Right. She was new to the place.
So when we say new, I don't know how new. It wasn't like days or weeks. It was, she had been there for a while, but she hadn't been there like her whole life, Amy's whole life. She called her mother after she was abducted. Now, this little thing that happens here could take you down 2 different avenues. Either A, Amy knew and had memorized her mother's work phone number. Or B, she hadn't. And if she had not, that means that her abductor knew Amy's mother's work phone number.
Yeah, or knew where she worked. Because back in that day, I just remember using the yellow pages a lot more back in the day.
Well, her mother worked for the Trading Times. Mm-hmm. So here's my thought on this. I don't know. We can't say with certainty that Amy would have been able to tell the abductor, I don't know the phone number, but my mother works at the Trading Times.
Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is the abductor wouldn't actually have to know the number. He would just have to know where she works. And that could be, you could find that out probably multiple different ways is what I'm saying.
No, I agree with you.
I like your theory.
I agree with you, but you got to consider this avenue that I'm thinking of here. Mm-hmm. Because regardless, at the time of that phone call, 2 things have occurred. 1, Amy's already been abducted. And 2, either her or the offender knew the phone number at that time. Mm-hmm. Or that phone call's not getting placed. Why is that phone call made? It's clearly being made to buy time. For the abductor to buy time.
Okay, explain yourself.
Well, he needs Amy's mother to believe that she's fine.
Right. Don't call the cops.
Right. She's not in my car. She's not in my home. She stayed late at school to go to choir practice. Mm-hmm. Amy's mom assumed that the call was coming from Amy calling from their home after she came home late from this choir practice.
Right.
When in fact, she's calling late because she's been abducted by this time.
Yeah. And she didn't sound stressed because she wouldn't have sounded stressed because, like you said, Amy's mom thought that was coming from their home.
Right. I think Margaret's words were that she sounded hurried.
Okay.
She doesn't say stressed. She says that Amy sounded hurried.
Well, yeah, because I'm assuming the abductor probably told her there's going to be some signs or whatever. Possibly said, or just did the typical hurry up, wrap it up. Who knows what he told her before she made the call.
Well, where I'm going with this is my old theory, and it's still the theory that I like the most for me. But the reason why I do these little exercises is because you can't hone in on one theory and just think that you're right. You got to look at every aspect of the case.
That's what a lot of people on the internet do.
So what I decided to do was, let's find a different angle here.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, this angle would 50% point to possibly the guy knew Amy's family somehow. Maybe Amy didn't know him,
Mm-hmm.
but he would have known her family. And what I mean by that is the phone calls that were going to the Mihaljevic home, when he spoke to her there, we don't know that he specifically named where Margaret worked. We don't know that he specifically named Margaret by name.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is I could call somebody's home in 1989 and a little kid pick up the phone and use the same ruse that he used without using the parent's name or where that parent worked. His ruse was, I work with your mother.
Mm-hmm.
She recently got a promotion, and I need help picking out a gift for her.
Mm-hmm.
So
you didn't use the name, and you have to use the title of work. Okay.
Right. I've always gone off of the impression that because we don't think he used Margaret's name or where she worked, that maybe this guy only pretended to know the Mihaljevic family.
Right.
However, if he abducts Amy and decides that a phone call needs to be made to buy some time, and Amy doesn't know her mom's work phone number or the name of her mother's business,
Mm-hmm.
then the offender must have. So he knew the Mihaljevic family enough to know where Amy's mother worked.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is she left her bicycle at the school. And this goes along with this whole theory that maybe he knew where Margaret worked. Because
Why? I don't understand.
Because she could have just rode her bike to the plaza, helped him pick out a gift, and then rode her bike home.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say this. Okay, there's a chance that there may have been more than one phone call between him and Amy before he abducted her. Or there's just one phone call. It doesn't matter. But the way that I could see this going is that he's saying, okay, to himself, let's see what I can get her to agree to.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can get her to agree to this, then let's see how far I can take it. So not only will you meet me to help pick out a gift for your mom? Sure, I'll meet you.
Right.
Okay. Well, you ride your bike to school. Just leave your bike at the school because the plaza's within walking distance.
Uh-huh.
Just leave your bike at the school. Meet me at the plaza. Well, why would she do that? Why would she do that unless being instructed to?
Right.
And the reason why I suggest this is Amy was seen at the plaza. That's how we know she went there.
Right.
If Amy was never seen at the plaza and she disappeared, guess where they think she would have disappeared from? From school.
The school.
Because they would have found her bike at the school. Guess what? That would have pointed to a whole different pool of suspects that our offender may not be in. He may not be in that pool of suspects.
Right.
So it takes him even further away from being detected.
Yeah.
So now I offered this up to James when I spoke to him.
Because if he abducted her, he would either have to abduct her, and if there was any kind of commotion, now he's going to have to deal with her plus a bike.
Possibly her bike, or at the very least, her bike is found at the plaza.
Exactly.
And
right.
they know she disappeared from there.
Yeah.
So then I offered this up. Here's my thought here. Amy was a very smart girl. And I don't know that she would agree to leave her bike and meet somebody without believing. She believed this guy. But here's what I wonder. He's using the ruse that he works with her mother already.
Yeah.
Amy's mother worked hours every day after Amy was already out of school.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is how the ruse goes down. Can you meet me at the shopping plaza? We're going to pick out something for your mother. Leave your bike at the school because I'm going to take you to your mom's work with me after we get the gift. And not only can you be a part of helping to pick out the gift for your mother, you can be there when it's presented to her. And your mother's going to drive you home from there or drive you back to your bike.
Right. So
I think that's an easy way to convince her to leave that bike at the school. You can be a part of presenting this gift to your mother. And guess what? She's going to feel even more safe now because not only are you doing something nice for her family, but you're also saying, I'm going to deliver you to your mother.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to do the thing that you normally hate that I do. But is it also possible that he just said, meet me here, and for whatever reason
she didn't take her bike?
She just didn't.
Well, anything's possible. Right. Anything's possible.
That's what you always hate.
No.
Oh, of course.
No, you would be foolish to throw things out unless you have evidence to prove that you should throw those things out.
Do we have any proof? Okay. So she went home that day and then she left.
No, that didn't happen. She went from the school to the plaza. She was seen walking to the plaza, and I think she even had a conversation with somebody along the way in passing.
Right. Okay. So,
and she was physically seen by more than one student at the plaza that day. And to the point where the reason why we have the composite drawing of who they think took her is because somebody saw her speaking with a man that at the time the kid believed to be Amy's father.
Yeah. So I just wonder if the plaza was close enough to the school where she was just like, man, I just won't take my bike. Just be easier this way.
It is a possibility. It's close enough.
And maybe didn't have a chain, for example, and just thought, well, I'll just leave it here.
Well, here was my thought, and that's what I wanted. That's why I posed the question to James, was because he would have seen the plaza many years before I did. I wondered if she just thought there was nowhere to tie up her bike. You know, if there's nowhere to chain up my bike there, then I should leave it at the school.
Right. Yeah.
And if that's the case, then that's the case. But then you also have this situation where he may have asked her to and gave her good reason to leave the bike.
Yeah.
Because if there would have been somewhere to chain up the bike, wouldn't you think it's one less stop on the way home that you could just go straight from the plaza to your house? That's why I kind of wonder if he said that your mother got a promotion. There's going to be a celebration. You know, somebody's so-and-so's getting a cake. You and I are in charge of getting the gift. Everybody's going to say something nice, clap, and you'll be there, and we'll give her the gift together. Yeah,
or maybe we're going to go here, then we're going to go somewhere else or whatever.
Right. I know.
There could be a multitude of reasons.
According to the people at the plaza at the time, there was no disturbance. There wasn't like they heard a kid screaming or an argument or anything like that. So if that in fact is the case, then one has to believe that she willingly got into this vehicle.
Yeah, that also just makes me feel like, what if she shows up and she's like, oh, I know this dude, but not like family friend, but like enough where she's like, oh yeah, I know that guy.
And she felt safe going with him. That's a possibility. But I also wondered, keep in mind, I think Amy was pretty smart, and I almost think that might have been off-putting to her, for her to be of the belief that she does not know who this guy is, and then show up and she recognizes him. To me, I just think back when I was 10, if I was going to meet somebody that I didn't know, and all of a sudden I show up and I'm like, well, why didn't you just say that you're Jim? Because I know you, Jim.
Right, but maybe she doesn't know Jim, right? She doesn't know Jim. If Jim called and said, hey, Amy, this is Jim, she'd be like, well, she wouldn't say this, but she, 10-year-old kid, I don't know who Jim is. I work with your mom, right? I don't know you. It's just like, my dad worked with a bunch of people that I didn't fully know their name, but if I was hanging out with my dad at work and they're like, it's me, Doug, I would have been like, oh yeah, I know who you are. But like if he would have called the house, I probably would have been like, I'm not really for sure who you are. Is what I'm saying.
Under that scenario, then, if I'm right, believing that it would be off-putting to her, under that scenario, he would have then told her on the phone, no, you do know me. And then when she shows up, she recognizes him.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Is like, maybe I'm not saying that before she saw him at the at the plaza, could she point him out in a lineup and say what his name was? I'm not saying that's how much she knew him. I'm saying it's possible that she just recognized him enough where she was just like, oh, this person. Because I'm sure, look, and this is going to sound bad, but you keep saying Amy's smart, which I understand. But this was a smart person that got tricked into doing something pretty dumb, right? To go to this place where you don't know anybody. And you're 10 years old, so you're little green, is what I'm saying. And so I think that when she showed up, I'm sure that when she showed up, she is probably on somewhat of alert. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that she saw this individual and just was like, oh, yeah, I know this person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because, like, for example, if somebody called my house when I was in 5th grade and said, hey, I'm coming over to pick up something that your father left for me. This is so-and-so from his work.
Right.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you the people that my father worked with, half the people's names. And they showed up, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's Larry.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't tell you Larry's name before he showed up, you know what I mean? But once I saw him, and once he said his name was Larry on the phone, I'm like, yeah, that's Larry. I'm not saying that this guy said his name on the phone, because I think he didn't.
Right. It's generally believed that he did not give her a name.
Right, because I think
because she never says his name to anybody else.
Right, and I think he knows that if he would have said his name or even something close to his name, that would have been enough of a mistake for people to catch him if he knew the family. But all I'm saying is there's something happened, whether it's her walking up right away and looking at this individual and saying, I know this guy from somewhere, and now I'm at ease. See what I'm saying? A 5th grader is going to be at ease once they recognize that person.
No.
Or was there and maybe that's something to get down to, or was there something that happened that put the Amy's mind at ease? See what I'm saying?
I agree with what you're saying, but what I actually think may have happened was, I think she was already at ease. I think she already believed the ruse, and that's the only reason why she went to the plaza to begin with. And what I mean by that is, like, okay, so there's a suspect that I like a lot, but the problem is for him to have been guilty, it gets a little sketchy with his involvement. Okay, so there is a guy named Martin Sabo. So Martin Sabo was one of Amy's very good friends, the father of one of her very good friends. Mm-hmm. The problem with Sabo is, can you imagine if you're having a conversation with somebody on the phone that tells you that they work with your father, they don't give you their name, they ask you to meet them somewhere at a plaza, and then you get there and it's somebody that's directly in your life?
Your friend's dad.
Right. Mm-hmm. Somebody that you've seen 100 times, somebody that you know by name. You see what I mean? That's what I mean. Is it?
But you might not know their name. But you'd know them. You'd recognize them.
No. This specific person, she knew his name.
Okay.
Martin, I'm just using him as an example.
Right.
What I'm saying is, a lot of the times these cases are committed by somebody that's very close to either the victim or the family. Where I have an issue with that is if she knew the person before meeting the person, she would have said the person by name, but she didn't, giving the indicator that he probably didn't give her his name and she didn't recognize his voice on the phone. What I'm getting at is, I think she was already at ease when she showed up there, and that's the only reason why she went there to begin with. I think it would have been very off-putting for her to get there under the guise that I don't know this person and I don't recognize their voice. This person didn't offer up their name or how they knew me. And then I get there and it's somebody that I directly know.
Yeah. I get your thought process. And I respect your thought process, but I think if she got there, that anybody that she somewhat knew, right? Even if it's just, that's my friend's dad, That's enough to keep her at ease. I don't think it would be that off-putting because, one, it's a 5th grader. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I think the way you're thinking is more a thought of like a late middle school or maybe even a high school kid. But I think like just that point of your life, if you showed up and you just knew the person or recognized the person, that would be enough to keep you at ease, is what I'm saying. I get that your idea is that she shows up, she doesn't think she knows him. All of a sudden,
no, but I'm actually going under the assumption that in this theory, this is just an angle that I'm working. I try to look at these at different angles and go, what if this is a possibility?
Right.
Under this theory, it's probably presented to her on the phone. You don't know me. I work with your mother.
Right. Right. But again, you walked there. It's probably a long way back to your. I mean, I remember having to walk home from school a couple times.
No. But what I'm saying is, with using somebody that's close to the family or close to Amy, you don't think that you would find it incredibly off-putting that the person tells you on the phone that you don't know me, I work with your mother, and then you get there and it's clearly somebody that you know.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is if it's somebody that you clearly know, that they could say that the whole first part could be a complete ruse. And then they just go, hey, Amy, what are you doing here? They're like, oh, well, I'm supposed to meet somebody to get a, gift for my mom. Oh, really? Well, I can wait with you. Okay. That'd be nice. This guy you don't know never shows up. And then you're like, hey, well, I'll just take you home.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're in my car. Now we're gone.
Well, you bring up an interesting thing there because one investigator regarding this case said, and this is a terrifying thought. He said, look, there's a very small chance that this is what went down. But maybe this can explain why we've never solved this case. And he said, what if it's just pure coincidence that there's some creep calling girls using this ruse of trying to get them to meet him somewhere? She agrees to do it. She shows up at the shopping plaza and never encounters that man. And it's just another random stranger, like you said, that happens to come across her that day. She mentions that she's supposed to meet somebody, and then he pretends to be that person.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets into his vehicle willingly, and we've never been able to solve it because how can you make that connection? How can you make that weird leap? And then she goes missing. It's widely reported. This was a very famous case at the time when she went missing.
Mm-hmm.
And this creep that was calling girls in the area goes, holy shit,
mm-hmm.
I better get out of here.
Or the calls were some kind of prank,
Yeah.
from whatever student.
The only thing that I offer up to combat that and those thoughts, one, that coincidence would be, that's a huge coincidence. That would be a very rare thing. And we're not talking about the one thing that I think is a misconception in this case. When we say shopping plaza on a Friday afternoon, it sounds like there's hundreds and hundreds of people there. There were not. There were very few cars in the parking lot. There was a couple dozen. Once you take away the employees of that place, there was not a lot of people there that day.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, these girls that were getting calls. Now, as far as we know, Amy was the only one that was called in Bay Village, as far as we know. But now there were girls in surrounding areas that were called as well. If all these calls are connected, and I believe that they are, this guy had a type. He wasn't just randomly calling people out of the phone book. He had a type. He had seen these girls somewhere, decided he was attracted to them, and somehow he got their phone number and started making these phone calls.
Yeah. It's just so strange because there's not another case that you can connect to Amy's to say, we think this one is connected.
Right. So that means a couple of things. Either this was a single offense, this was a single murder committed by this person, that he abducted her, things didn't go the way he thought they would, and the result was murder.
Right, we kind of talked about that before
and he's never done it again,
right.
Or the individual completely left the area.
Yeah. But we know that she was raped.
There's some argument on both sides of that fence. Again, this goes to the situation similar to the DNA situation. Like Renner said, they've always been very cagey about whether they have DNA or not. Now, when I say they, law enforcement, I don't have in my recollection any direct statement or quote from anyone investigating her case that said hands down she was raped.
Because to me that changes the
the
motive completely.
It can still be sexual without the actual rape. And the reason why I believe there was a sexual aspect to this, and the reason why law enforcement believes it as well, is it's believed that she was naked at the time of her murder. Right. And the reason being is that she was found clothed. But when they believe she was dressed after the murder. And the evidence of that is that the underwear that she was found wearing, it was hers, but it was inside out. They believe that was a mistake that the killer had made when he redressed her before dumping the body.
Or didn't care.
Right.
That's just, but like you said, if there's some evidence of, if she's murdered, being naked, then to me, like you said, that suggests some kind of sexual motivation. And
well, here's the worst part of it, and this is why I got into this case a couple weeks ago, and I told you last week when we talked about it a little bit. I said, look, man, I had a fucking breakdown last Friday night, and you're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I went out, I got fucking hammered. I drank out of stress. I hadn't drank for 4 or 5 days. I was looking into Amy's case for every extra second that I had of every day. And I just grew more and more angry because we talked about Billy Strunak here. The thing that infuriates me about this case is, one, the victim and her age and what I can only imagine was done to her. But two, there's like a bazillion people that look like good suspects, to the point where you're like, why in the hell has this thing not been solved?
Right.
And to the point where Billy Strunak is just another one of these weird avenues that you have to go down when you talk about this case. And I told you, I said, I had a fucking breakdown on Friday night about 1 or 2 in the morning. I guess by that time it's Saturday morning, but
you shouldn't stress drink. That's worst time to drink.
I'm sitting in the damn near dark in my family room, staring at a blank TV, and I'm sitting there telling myself, I'm calling the captain tomorrow, and I've decided,
and I'm firing him.
And I was like, I'm calling him tomorrow, and I'm going to let him know that I have to, for me, talk about this case until there's nothing left to talk about anymore. That's the only way I can get out of this, and I'm going to have to ask permission and get his blessing that we can do this. And then, of course, a few days later, I realized, I can't hijack the show and do that.
Mm-hmm.
But
you can do whatever you want, really.
But this is one of those cases. It's never ending, man. It's never ending. There's 100,000 things to talk about in this case. It's a weird situation where a grown man set on sexually assaulting a child decided that he was going to, this is the terrifying thing, he basically walked into her home and convinced her to go with him via the phone.
Right.
The most evil man you can think of used the telephone to walk into her home and get her to take his hand and leave with him.
Yeah, but are they convinced that it's a man, like a grown man, like 20s, 30s, 40s? I mean, I know that.
Well, a man was seen with her right before she wasn't seen again. And the reason why I think
who are those eyewitnesses? Just because I'm not clear on that.
They were children that she went to school with. They were children that could identify Amy, but not identify the man that was seen with her.
Right. But this individual could have been late high school, early college, and kids would have probably called him a man.
Well, true, but I think the reason why they've put that age on this person is there's a few psychological factors involved that we won't get into.
But a lot of people said that Amy was with her father, or thought.
Later, after she was gone, more than one child said, I just assumed she was talking to her father. And what I think that means, and why I think they were able to put an age to that description of the man, is that when other kids are saying, I just assumed it was her father, they're saying that based off of how old he looks in comparison to Amy.
Right.
Their fathers, these are all kids about her same age. Their fathers would have been about the same age as Amy's father.
So 28 to...
Well, that's...
So 50.
Well, when we say, I said late 20s, early 30s, when we were talking about Billy Strunak, and when we were talking about the criminal profile put together by the FBI agents, I don't think that they based that off of eyewitness statements. Because when you look at the composite drawing, the first ones that started to come out, they have a later age that they put on those that I think says like 35 to 45.
Right.
Which would have roughly been, would have been in the realm of her parents' ages.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. The individual would have been about 25 when they had Amy. So it's just I got the coughs. It's just I don't know. It's one of those cases where I think it's just swallowed a bug. I did get an email about some guy. I have no clue about anything because we just get so many random emails. And try to reply to as many as you can. I do get to them all eventually. I think I'm like behind like 120 emails right now, but there was some email about a guy working on a Amy podcast exclusive. I'd love to do one. I just don't know.
Well, I hope they do a good job because I'll be pissed if if somebody covers it and they don't do it. It's like what you said with the Mara Murray case when you're like, sweet, Oxygen is going to do a documentary on it. Oh, wait, I hope they do a good job. Because there are cases that you get close to and you hold them in high regard.
Yeah, and it's harder for you to admit that they did a good job. Yeah. You know what I mean? Well, No, you hold them to a higher standard going into it. Right, that's what I mean. But it's harder for them to get a boy.
Right. They have to really earn it.
They have to earn it. And that's why I think that documentary was so great, the disappearance of Mara Murray. But also, we kind of talked about that. I mean, I was a little, I wouldn't say pissed off would be the right word because we met Bob Ruff at CrimeCon last year and super cool guy. He's kind of like a mix between me and you. Like if you smash us together, probably drinks as much as you. He has the investigative side of you. He has more of a captain build, though, with a beard.
He reminds me of, there's a sports guy that he reminds me of, and I can't think of his name right now.
Mike Tyson.
No, not an athlete. Not an athlete. Sorry, Bob. Not an athlete, but no, a guy that has like a talk show, sports talk show. Dan Le Batard.
Oh, yeah.
He kind of reminds me, not 100%, but it's probably just the dark beard, but they kind of talk similar.
Yeah, but it's like when I found out that, this season he's going to cover West Memphis 3,
you're super excited, but you're also like, oh, I hope he does a good job.
Well, I was a little pissed because we kind of talked, and he would have no way of knowing this, but we've talked, like if we were, we did a 3-parter on that. We always thought that we could dive into it more.
Yeah, it was wasn't it the first 3-part show we had ever done?
I think so.
And I think, we did OJ. We did a 3-part on OJ, but I think we really felt like with 3 episodes that are at least an hour long, we're going to be able to cover everything.
And there was so much we didn't
get to.
it
was just the tip of the iceberg.
Right, and we kind of talked roughly, we got the show going, and I think we talked a little bit before we started doing 2-parters every week. But not every week, but I think we talked a little bit about, we should do like a series, like a long form, because I've always been really interested. I mean, I've always been super into any of the NPR stuff, and then NPR has been responsible pretty much for Serial and S-Town and all that stuff, and I think doing an 8-part series or a 10-part series would be really cool on the creative side of making the podcast. And he's doing it a little different than that. But I always thought, we could do the definitive 10-part series on West Memphis 3. But now, I mean, you've been listening to it. I've only listened to a couple episodes.
He might be at like the 15, 16 episode mark on it now. I mean, he's done a bunch of them. I don't have a direct number right in front of me, but his format is a little different than ours, and it's a unique format. I really enjoy the format where he will release a show that's kind of packed with information on a specific subject, and then he'll do a follow-up episode that is kind of him answering questions that listeners have come up with based off of the information they've just received, and it gives him a chance to clarify some things, because, we report some things, and there are times where we'll talk a day or two later and we're like, we got into it about this thing, but we only got about 80% through that one part.
Yeah.
And we, so.
Recording a show is so frustrating to me because.
I think he's going to do. I think with the format he has, I was trying to say 50 and format at the same time.
Right.
I think with the format that he has that you're looking at, he's probably going to do 50 episodes on the West Memphis 3 case.
I just wish I had the time to listen to it all, And
it only takes about 2 hours a week.
Well,
I'm teasing you. It doesn't. I know how busy you are.
Well, it's not that I don't have the time. I have the time to devote to listen to it. The problem is I won't, because I think it's important to dive into the case, whatever case we're covering that week, and I really try to just focus on that. And if I'm going to watch something or if I'm going to listen to another show about a case, it's going to be about that case.
Right.
And so, I have, I used to probably listen to, I bet, 10 to 15 hours a week of podcast. And I probably, on average, now listen to 2 to 3. Just because, my job, even outside of the podcast, all my job is audio. So I can't listen. I used to work at a bank, and so I'd be plugging in numbers, and I could listen to a podcast while I plugged in numbers. And I'm really bad. I can't listen to a podcast and reply to emails.
Right.
Because what will happen is I'll have to turn off my brain of listening to reply to the email, and then when I go back to listening, I'm going, I don't even know what the hell they're talking about anymore. But so probably listen to about 2 to 3 hours of podcast a week now, 2 to 4. And I listen to my This American Life every Sunday or Monday night, and I listen to Chris D'Elia, Congratulations, and that's pretty much all.
Well, the car is a good place for me to listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
I listen to very little radio anymore, and I've kind of replaced that all with podcasts when I'm driving.
Right.
The only issue with that, especially when it comes to true crime for me, is that eventually my driving trip ends and they might not be done talking about the case yet.
Right.
So sometimes I don't make it all the way through episodes.